Welcome into another episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. I am Will Thomas, and we have our shortest preview of the year. The SEC championship game is tomorrow, Alabama versus Georgia, because why wouldn't it be these two teams? Again, Georgia is favored by 2.5, total at 47.5, and when I'm looking at this game, both defenses, they're top 12 in the country, not the SEC, in the country in points per game, and top 13 in the country in yards allowed per game. And they're both kind of good at different things. Bama's secondary and pass defense has been very, very good, while the run defense has left a little bit to be desired. And Georgia has the fifth best run defense in the in the nation, and their secondary has had some holes. So both defenses are kind of mirror images of each other in the sense where they're flip-flopped, right? Their strengths and weaknesses are kind of opposite. And neither team is great defensively at getting to the quarterback. They're both bottom 5 in the SEC in sacks. Bama has 24, Georgia has 17, but they're pretty good on the offensive line and not allowing sacks. Bama's allowed 23, Georgia allowed 17. So I don't expect a lot of pressure in this game. I don't expect a lot of, havoc behind the line of scrimmage. I don't expect the quarterbacks to really be under duress a lot. So the question after that is, who does that benefit more? And it definitely benefits Ty Simpson and Bama more, right? Because they don't really have a run game to begin with. They don't have a solid ground attack, especially with Jam Miller now being out, to where they can rely on the run to take the pressure off the pass rush and get downfield. They need to just rely on their pass blockers. So having a strong offensive line going up against a pass rush, granted for Georgia that has come on as of late very well, but for the season, they don't have a lot of sacks, aren't great at getting pressure. That definitely helps Alabama. And for Georgia offensively, we know, they want to run the ball. But by no means are they limited through the air. It really is truly a ground and pound to set up Gunnar Stockton being able to throw downfield to those receivers. Bama just still can't run the ball on tackling dummies. They're going to have to air it out. My question is, does Ryan Williams get out of witness protection in this game? He loves playing against Georgia. It seems to do. We do get that again. Both offenses are going into the relative weakness of the other team. Bama throwing the ball around. Georgia's secondary is where you can get them. Georgia wants to run the ball a lot. That's where you can get Bama's defense. So both teams are kind of going into the other's relative weakness. So for that reason, I kind of think we could see not a high-scoring game, but I do think going over that 47.5 is where I'm going to end up on this game. And looking back at last game, earlier in the season when Bama went to Athens and beat them, Alabama was 13 of 19 on third down, and Georgia was 2 of 8. That is the ultimate regression to the mean stat that I've ever seen, because no team can go 13 of 19 consistently, especially against a defense as good as Georgia's. That's just not going to replicate. And for Georgia, going 2 of 8, they're a better offense than that on third down. They are. The numbers tell you that. So I think you'll see the third down stats kind of, maybe not flip-flop fully, but I think you're going to see it even out a lot. And the rush blitz in the last game, Bama, just 3.1 yards per carry. I expect them to be around that again. Georgia was 6.9. And I have no reason to believe that Georgia's rushing game is going to be any worse than it was against Bama earlier in the year. And despite all that, Bama won the last game. But that was with Jam Miller in the backfield, even though he wasn't maybe totally healthy. He was just coming back. But Bama without Miller, Daniel Hill I do think is a great running back, but you kind of need that depth. You need a little more of that rotation that you're just not getting with Jam Miller being out. So I think that Bama's rushing will still not be very good. Georgia's rushing should still be very effective. That's how they've been all year, and going up against a Bama defense who's a little weaker against the run, it should work out very well for Georgia. And then special teams. I think there could be an angle here because Georgia, they have the best field goal percentage in the conference, making 93.8% of them. Bama is 15th in the SEC at just 65. You cannot leave points on the board in the SEC championship game. You just can't. And those numbers tell me that we could easily see a missed field goal by Bama into a made field goal by Georgia. You could just have a 6-point swing because of the field goal kickers in this game. Georgia is also winning the punt battle in both gross average and net average. So if that means anything, you take that. But I think special teams, the edge goes to Georgia. Offensively, when you can succeed in the ground, that is more sustainable than succeeding through the air. So I'll go edge to Georgia. Defensively, I think there's kind of a push, just because both teams do have flip-flopped relative weaknesses to this game. But Georgia and Kirby Smart, they have had a really hard time getting the Alabama monkey off their back. And it wasn't just Saban, because now DeBoer is 2-0 versus Kirby and Georgia. But they haven't had to beat them twice. And it's a very old adage, where it's hard to beat a team twice. In college basketball, beat a team 3 times even. I think that plays true in this game. I like Georgia in this game, like 27-21, so just barely going over that total, but I do think that both teams are able to get a good bit of touchdowns. You can maybe even see a team hit 30, get to 4 touchdowns in this game, but I got Georgia by a possession. I think the Bulldogs win another SEC championship, and then that will bring up the conversation about Bama and the playoff. I'm of the opinion that you can't possibly leave them out, unless it's because BYU wins. And then you can say, we didn't drop Bama, they just got jumped by BYU. That would be okay. But you'd then have a 3-loss Bama team whose third loss came in the SEC championship, going up against a bunch of 2-loss resumes. So we'll see how it goes, but I do think that is the discussion that we're going to have. I like Georgia to win, I like Georgia to cover, and I like the over. Let's all sit back and enjoy this SEC championship weekend and conference championship weekend together. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. I have been Will Thomas, and I will see you next time.